What is a cult?
Hi, my name is Renee, and I'm not a Satanist.
This question often triggers a lot of debate. I've tried to consider it from various different viewpoints, and I'm quite happy with what I've come up with, but I'd love to hear comments from viewers to see what they think in the comment section below once I've finished. So, jumping straight into it, here's my definition. My understanding of the word cult is that it can be used to describe any group that shares a common focus. And these operate on a continuum from harmless through to destructive, depending on the level of top-down coercive control it exercises over members. I also like to say there are cults and there are cults. What I mean by this is that there are cults with a little c and cults with a big C. I'm borrowing this concept from trauma-informed practice, in which trauma can be discussed as having a big T or a little t. If you're not familiar with this, then I recommend you check out a blog I've written about the topic. I'll post a link in the description below. Cults with a little c refers to the colloquial use of the word. For example, a fitness cult to describe people who like to work out, or a fashion cult. So there's also celebrity cults like Oprah or Gandhi, or movie cults like Marvel, or one of my favourites, Harry Potter. And you can also have cults for just about anything, like for example, technology. When thinking about cults with a little c, I'd like to also just give a little bit of history of the word and how it's been used in the past. And also just sort of give reference to the idea that some people like to use the word cult for all religions, which according to etymology is actually quite accurate. All religions were once called cults in the sense that the word refers to a group of people that share a common focus. To get a little bit more technical, the word cult comes from the Latin word for agriculture. A few thousand years ago, people who understood how to grow crops were considered to be very wise because they had intimate knowledge of the weather patterns and how to grow successful crops. This knowledge was often intertwined with spiritual beliefs about which gods and goddesses needed to be worshipped or appeased to ensure large harvests. These wise people of agriculture were leaders of family communities. So over time, the word, I guess you could say, it got abbreviated. And over a bit more time, it came into the English language to mean any group of people who shared a common belief system. The upshot of all this is that, like I said a moment ago, it is actually quite accurate to call all religions cult. Exactly when cult became a derogative term is a little bit difficult to decipher. Roughly speaking, it was probably a gradual process that occurred over the last few hundred years. Now to move on to cults with a big C. According to my definition, cults with a big C are your harmful, destructive cults. Other words commonly associated with the big C are exploitative, thought reform, and isolation. The classic example being Jim Jones, in which it is a cult known for over 900 people being killed. The Moonies are another commonly known cult in which members are estranged from their family and marry people who they barely know in these mass ceremonies. And in Australia, our most notorious cult is the family. Members, both children and adult, were subjected to a special initiation ritual that involved LSD, and they were under the control of Anne Hamilton Byrne. So that's why I say there are cults with a little c and cults with a big C. In between these two extremes are many variations and many levels of potential harm. More often than not, it's not the belief system that is the issue, it is the behaviour, in particular the abuse of power and control, that the leadership has over the followers that is the real issue. In contemporary language, this is known as coercive control. So what is a cult with a big C? These are high-demand groups that use coercive control, and it is these types of cults that people need to be aware of. Anyone who's watched my previous video will also know that I like to use the metaphor of Little Red Riding Hood to help define the features of harmful cults. But before I get into these 12 criteria, I'm going to give a brief background as to where I got my information from. Up on your screen are the names of 3 key experts. There are many more out there, but these are 3 which I'll probably reference the most in compiling my own rubric. First of all, we have Rick Ross. He got into the cult-busting business many decades ago after watching his grandmother being coerced by a group that infiltrated her nursing home. Since then, he's been involved in deprogramming victims and promoting education about cults on his website titled Cult Education Institute. Next, we have Stephen Hassan. As a young man, Hassan was recruited by the Moonies, also known as the Unification Church. He's now an academic and psychologist who specialises in high-demand groups. I'll post a link to some of his work and background in the notes below. In the third column on the right, we have Janja LadyInRed. LadyInRed was involved in a political cult for many years. Her story of seeking and working towards a utopian future only to realise that the hellish conditions she was enduring to try to get there weren't the promise of better times to come. LadyInRed is now recognised as a sociologist who promotes cult awareness. So that's a brief introduction to the 3 of these people. To a larger or lesser degree, they all say very similar things. To do a bit of a comparison, they all emphasise the qualities of group leaders as being an important aspect in identifying cult dynamics. Ross holds the view that there needs to be a specific leader who has charismatic qualities that attracts members and then controls them through adversive authoritarianism. Hassan, on the other hand, does not believe there needs to be a specific charismatic leader, just authoritarian leadership. By broadening the definition here, Hassan's model allows for recognition of groups that do not have a specific leader. So, for example, QAnon, or groups in which the original charismatic leader has deceased and therefore the group has continued under a hierarchical leadership. So, for example, the Exclusive Brethren. LadyInRed's category of charismatic leadership encompasses both Ross and Hassan's ideas, which I agree is a good way to approach the matter. There are some minor differences. For example, what Ross calls exclusive knowledge, LadyInRed calls exclusivity and special knowledge. Similarly, what Ross calls fear tactics, Hassan calls fear and intimidation. And both Hassan and LadyInRed both have characteristics called us versus them mentality. I'm not going to go into any more detail about what these experts define as the characteristics of a cult. I just want viewers to know where I got my information from to create my own personal criteria. Here's a summary which is a little bit easier to read. So getting back to the idea that I like to use Little Red Riding Hood as a metaphor for describing the features of cults. To give you an example, both cults and wolves have a predatory nature. Just as wolves hunt and prey on weaker animals, cult leaders look for victims that they can manipulate and exploit. I'll leave it there and I'll go into more detail about those characteristics in my next video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.